President Biden. Where do you stand on the issue, and can you tell us a little bit about your thinking behind that?
So I'm on the Judiciary Committee and have had the opportunity to bring in some of the witnesses and the whistleblowers who have testified about the manner in which Hunter Biden has been treated over the last several years. So have quite a bit of background information as to what we're looking at and what the evidence is showing and what the case that's being built. This is the formal impeachment inquiry. I am looking forward to voting in favor of that today. I do believe that it will pass, and I think that this is just one more tool in the toolbox, and what it does is it takes one of the arguments away as to whether this is an official impeachment inquiry, and I'm looking forward to moving to doing additional investigation and watching what the Ways and Means Committee is doing and what Mr. Comer on the Oversight Committee is doing. I think that when we have everything pulled together, we will have a good case to present to the American people as to the corruption of the Biden crime family.
So you mentioned Hunter Biden. He was on the Hill earlier today outside on the grounds. He did not testify behind closed doors. He said he wanted to testify in the open. And what's your reaction to his concern about closed door versus open testimony?
So this is just one of the processes that we use. This isn't unusual. This is not an unusual situation. We're the ones who are running the inquiry, running the investigation, and it is very common, if not standard operating procedure, to do a behind the closed door interview or deposition, and then bring it out into the open after you've done your investigation. So I think it's just him manipulating the process is really the reality of that. Very standard operating procedure. So nothing unusual as to what Jamie Comer asked him to do. I did find it fascinating that he and his coterie, he had a whole entourage of people piling in and out of a black SUV. It was just kind of funny to watch on TV today.
And you talked a lot about how the impeachment relates to Hunter Biden. So do you believe the evidence does show a connection?
What I would say is that Hunter Biden really had no skill set to sell. There wasn't anything that he wasn't an expert on Ukrainian oil and gas or Ukrainian employment law. His only value to these companies in the Chinese Communist Party and Kazakhstan and Romania and other governments that he worked for, his only asset to sell was Joe Biden. It was access to Joe Biden and Joe Biden's ability to carry out the dirty work for whomever Hunter Biden was working for. An example is Joe Biden admitting on TV that he demanded that the Ukrainians fire the prosecutor that was investigating Burisma, or they would not be able to get the money that the United States was sending to the Ukraine. So I think that that's one of the classic examples. But what you have to look at is the way that they set up their entire network of companies. They had over 20 LLCs, and the money would come in, say, from the oligarch in Russia or the Chinese Communist Party. The money would come into one LLC, and they would pour it into another one, and pour it into another one, and pour money into another one, and pour money into another one. And then the family would use that money to pay their personal expenses, pay their rent, pay their mortgage, whatever it was. But none of them were working for any of these companies. None of them were actually doing anything. They weren't showing up on Monday morning at 9 a.m. and actually accomplishing anything. These were shell companies that were created solely for the purpose of laundering money and laundering the ill-gotten gains from foreign countries that, frankly, do not have our best interest at heart. The other thing that I think is incredibly important is the extent to which our foreign policy and national security is compromised because of Hunter Biden's activities. So I think that this administration has been incredibly weak when it comes to China. The response to what we now know was a lab leak out of Wuhan. Very little investigation, very little interest in actually exposing what happened there. We know of the Chinese spy balloon that traversed the entire country without any kind of pushback from this administration. And China is our number one enemy right now. And I just find it fascinating that this administration is doing very little to address things such as the theft of intellectual property, their illegal fishing. There's just so many things. Their threats to Taiwan, their buildup in the South China Sea. This administration has been very, very weak when it comes to China, even though we all acknowledge that they are a grave threat to our country. And I think that you have to look at the relationship between Hunter Biden and the Chinese Communist Party, and I think that explains it.
And then briefly, how will this impact your specific district, which is the Wyoming District?
The state of Wyoming? For many ways. And again, I think it goes back to China. I think that our failed energy policy has only empowered the Chinese Communist Party. We're one of the largest energy producers in the nation, yet we have an administration that is absolutely hostile to our coal producers, absolutely hostile to our oil and gas producers, while at the same time empowering China with almost every single decision that is made. Their obsession with global warming, their hysteria over the climate crisis, they're using that as an excuse to destroy the economy in Wyoming while empowering China. And again, I have to go back to what extent that policy is being driven because of the relationship between Hunter Biden and the Chinese Communist Party. So I think from Wyoming's standpoint, it's incredibly important that we get to the bottom of why the Biden administration is willing to destroy our domestic energy production, at the same time empowering China to, number one, build massive numbers of coal-fired power plants, and their decision to again affect our domestic economy while empowering China.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you.